We heard those reports. I obviously reached out to Conservatives, got a very mixed reaction, so we sent a crew to the riding today. And in the first 10 people they spoke to, and we played some of them, it was literally down the middle. 5 thought that the Liberals would flip it or were voting for the Liberals, and 5 were voting to hold the seat for Pierre Poilievre. What does the fact that this is even being talked about say to you?
Well, I think that a lot of ridings in suburban Ottawa are going to be competitive for the Liberals. There's no secret about that, but I remain utterly confident in Pierre's ability to win his own riding. Let's not forget that one of the most diabolical institutions in Canadian politics is the Liberal war room, who always manage to find a story or stir the pot right at the appropriate time to knock the Conservative leader off his messaging. So this, to me, is just the usual Ottawa jiggery-pokery that really doesn't have any place in mainstream politics.
I guess, Christine, my sort of gentle pushback to that would be, my colleague Bob Fife at the Globe and Mail, I think, has been accused of every party of being like the most evil person who's in it to defeat them. I don't think he's easily swayed by anybody's war room, and I don't know if he would necessarily take it to print if he didn't feel as though there was some merit in particular to the idea that the Conservatives were sending resources there. What does it say to you?
Well, I was out in Bruce Fanjoy's riding with his campaign, sitting with his campaign team and talking strategy back in January. He has been working that riding door to door, long conversations with people for well over a year. He is, if there's ever been an opportunity to beat a leader, I think it's going to be in this riding, because Bruce Fanjoy's been working so hard. I'm going to be going back to see Bruce Fanjoy and campaign with him tomorrow, because we really believe this is going to be a very, very close riding. I mean, think about it. Pierre Poilievre is planning to absolutely decimate the public service of Canada, many of whom live in his riding. It feels to me like there are going to be a lot of people looking to band together to find the alternative to Pierre Poilievre, and there is really only one. That's the guy that's been working for a year. That's Bruce.
I take your point, just very quickly, I take your point on the accusation. I would just point out in the platforms of the Liberals and the Conservatives both say that they will eliminate jobs in the public service through attrition, and that even the Trudeau government promised to eliminate 5,000 jobs over, I think, a period of a number of years through attrition as well. I understand the accusation, but that's what is in the platforms at least.
Well, if you
Nathan,
look,
what does it say to you that
Poilievre has said, though? I mean, over the years, his many years of putting together this platform, he has not said he wants to get rid of it through slow, careful work. He's talked about really going hard after the civil service with deep, deep cuts across the country. Now, the platform may say something different, but I think Pierre Poilievre's words would speak more strongly than that.
Relatively
I'll let Nathan get in, and then
point.
Tony, I'll go back to you. I promise. I'll get everybody in. I just want to get Nathan in for his first.
Yeah, I mean, the public servants around Ottawa have voted NDP, they voted Liberal, they voted Conservative. Sometimes the specter of the threat of firings can sway their votes, but the platforms are relatively indistinguishable in terms of firing a bunch of federal public servants from both the Liberals and the Conservatives. How you do it maybe matters a little bit, but not entirely. But first of all, Vashi, I thought this was a family show. I didn't think we were allowed to say jiggery-pokery on television, so I don't know if the censors can take care of this. And secondly, if I ever wished for an election name, Fanjoy would be up there on the top 3 of my list. What a fantastic name to campaign, like just on the signs, right? Christy, you must have loved putting up those signs. Can Pierre lose this riding? Possibly, but I think the existential crisis for Mr. Poilievre is more the election results, right? If he is unable to defeat the Liberals after this many years, and what comes next, I think that's probably a more relevant question. If he loses his riding, he's obviously done on a number of fronts. But I think the threat of him forming government has gone down, and we're seeing that in the riding where I am, up in the northwest in BC, and Skeena. The threat of Poilievre has dropped, and people are getting a little bit more concerned around things like strategic voting, which here it's an orange-blue fight. So Taylor Bachrach is seeing an uptick, and I look for lawn signs, by the way. Everybody looks at polling, and I live in rural Canada. We don't take a lot of credit for polling because we don't get polled a lot. I'm as a seasoned, practiced person who's campaigned a lot. I think when people stick a lawn sign up and up here it's blue or orange, And Orange is a little bit ahead, I hope, but we'll see. And I think but the question of his riding, who knows? But if that's on the table, then Pierre's got other considerations for his future.
Yeah.
I have another question for Tony on that, but I just want to quickly follow up. If you think that if Mr. Poilievre loses his riding, he's got to go, do you think the same of Mr. Singh if he loses his riding?
Yeah, I think Jagmeet's going to do fine in the Lower Mainland, as will a number of surprise concentrated votes. The advantage the NDP has quickly is that, they're targeting 25, 35, 40 seats, 50 seats at the most. So that gives them a bonus that the polls don't show. I would just offer that, I think he'll do fine. I think he's going to come out of Burnaby fine, and we'll go with what's next.
See, you are a seasoned politician. You did avoid answering the direct part of
party
my
leaders
question.
party leaders losing their seat is not an indication whether it's Poilievre or I'm forgetting the list of leaders who have lost seats. It sucks. There's nothing great about it.
I'm teasing.
I know, it's okay.
Tony, I did want to ask you about below the kind of, I guess, below the surface. Insofar as if you read the stories from the Star in the Globe, there are provincial sources from Ontario who are providing them with some of the data points that inform that reporting. And I think that speaks to what perhaps is a bigger storyline, which is this sort of schism between the provincial Conservatives in Ontario and the federal Conservatives. Do you ultimately think that will hurt the federal Conservatives at the ballot box?
I'm glad you asked that question because, as I say, I've been out campaigning in more than a dozen ridings, and there are many Ontario progressive Conservatives who are campaigning for the federal candidate in their riding. I was there in person when Natalia Kuzendova, who's the long-term care minister, endorsed publicly Pierre Poilievre. Of course, Caroline Mulroney has done the same thing. So from my perspective, there's a lot of provincial Conservatives who are actually doing what they can to help elect Pierre Poilievre in a national Conservative government.
And my apologies, I don't think you saw it, Tony, but there, like some Zoom sign or something just came up on the screen, which caused me to laugh for a moment. It's gone. We can see you clearly now. Christy, what Tony said is actually something that a lot of federal Conservatives have said to me, which is below the leader level, there is a lot of people who are helping each other out and supportive of each other. But at the leader level, Doug Ford and Pierre Poilievre, it's clearly not the same relationship as Tony is describing elsewhere. Do you think that will ultimately matter for the federal Conservatives?
Well, I think it will in this way because, first, I do think it's a blessing for Pierre Poilievre to lose his riding for the reasons that Nathan has pointed out. I think if he loses, his riding, he's done. He will be, he's losing the election. That opens up the possibility that Doug Ford will become the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and so if there is cooperation, I'm sure some of it is quite self-interested. I'm sure there's also, though, a lot of rivalry between the two that's opened up because, it's not just Liberals that are talking about this, it's Conservatives.
Nathan, I'll give you the last word on this, and I would ask you more generally about the state of things right now. All the aggregators, and I know the polls are what the polls are, but everything is showing actually some incremental movement, which when things are as tight as they are, it could be potentially meaningful. As you say, you've been out on the ground. Like, is your sense there are any tangible shifts heading into the election day?
Well, like I said before, when it looked like a 25-point lead, the Conservatives were going in. It looked a certain way. Now that's changed. It was neck and neck, and now what the pollsters tell us, and I think this is generally true, is that in order for the Conservatives to win, because their vote is so concentrated, you've had this on your show many times, they actually need to be 5 or 6 points ahead. They're not going to get there. It's just a few days to go. And so this is going to be an exciting night in terms of the riding by riding battles. I'm on the West Coast, looking at Vancouver Island, looking at Lower Mainland, looking up here in the Northwest. And I think these are going to be a lot more deterministic. And it's lovely as a West Coaster that we're likely going to have something to say about the outcome of a federal election, not have it all decided hours before our polls close. It's going to be a great night on Monday for that level alone. It's going to be very interesting to see how Canadians come out, who has the most efficient ground game, and all of those things that us political types like to talk about.
Yeah, I feel like there's two people on this panel who are happy about that BC part. And it will, I think, be a long, exciting, interesting night. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate the discussion, as always. Christy Clark, Tony Clement, and Nathan Cullen, our front bench.